Today on Voice of the Valleys, the Starmer regime cracks down on another prominent citizen journalist. You may know him online on X in particular as ActivePatriotUK, going to be highlighting what happened to him and the draconian conditions that have been placed on him and why. We're also going to be talking about a migrant that climbs up 2 stories in order to try and commit a sexual attack on a young girl. Luckily for her, her father was home and very quickly remedied the situation. 100 women's rights groups have come out and said that linking sexual violence to immigration is inflammatory and untrue, and Pervy Plod takes home girls' underwear in his back pocket. Luckily, he was caught on video doing so. All that and more today on Voice of the Valleys. Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys yet again with your host, friendly neighborhood far-right thug, enemy of the state, but not really still that prominent, Mr. George Cresswell. Hope we're all doing well. Hope we're all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever we are. So a couple of headline stories for today summarized in that little intro, but we got so much more than just those to talk about. First off, I'd like to say a quick thank you to everybody that likes, shares, comments, everything on the channel, whether it's on Rumble, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Spotify. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope you get some value out of it from the things that we talk about, the stories we highlight, and the additional perspectives and such. So getting straight into it. Just before we talk about one of the most stark examples of the Starmer regime cracking down on prominent individuals that highlight a lot of the problems going on in the UK, particularly with regards to the immigration invasion. Active Patriot UK, a man by the name of Alan Leggett, we'll get onto him in a moment. We need to talk about something which I was hoping I was going to be able to get the full article up, but unfortunately it seems to be in exclusive in the Scottish Sun, and I'm not paying for any of that garbage, so I'm just going off of a thread which somebody has made on X. Did you know that in the Scottish forest, I'm not exactly sure where it is, on a hill near Jedburgh, in a Scottish forest, there's now been a tribe of African migrants that have set up camp there and are basically now using this as a foreign settlement. They've called it the Kingdom of Kubala. So yes, we now have a kingdom within our kingdom, which is not so united and not so much of a kingdom anymore as it is part of the wider caliphate. The defender of the faith of this nation now giving his addresses, starting off with Salam Alaikum, which is obviously an Islamic greeting. The greeting comes up a lot in a book which I just finished, by the way, which I'm going to be doing a more in-depth breakdown on, called The Last Girl. Nadia Murad, who wrote about her experiences. She was a Yazidi that was not killed in the genocide, but she was taken as a Sabiya, an Islamic sex slave by ISIS, and the treatment she had was absolutely horrendous. She's now a very prominent individual. She's spoken at the UN about her experiences and stuff like that. But I've just finished the book. I'm going to be doing a wider, more in-depth breakdown of that coming very soon. Hopefully, I'm going away at the end of this week, so it probably won't be out any time in the next week or so. But hopefully going to be sitting down to talk about that a little bit, at least get it filmed before I go away this weekend. So, the Kingdom of Kubala was originally on a hill near Jedburgh, but the local council evicted them, so now they live in a woods nearby. So, I believe this is the king. I believe this is the king of this Kubala kingdom for you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just put this image up on screen and allow you to sort of draw your own ideas on this, right? To see it for yourselves and allow you to sort of have independent thought over this, which I know is something that is heavily criminalized. I'm just going to move my camera down just a little bit. I know it's heavily criminalized in UK society today, independent thought and stuff like that, right? But these are some of the things that we have going on in the Scottish, mind you, Scottish woods. So for those of you who are listening, not watching, there's a gentleman here with various markings on his face. Appears to have some kind, I'm not sure whether it's the light or whether it's, some kind of paint that he has on his face. But it's actually with what looks to be some kind of, monarchical spear, if you will. There's 2 ladies sat either side of him. tribal gear. One of them appears to have like a spin on like what do you call them? The I can't think of what they're called. Poncho. That's the word I'm looking for. Ponchos on, some kind of necklace on. Face paint is kind of ritualistic, patterns extending out from the nose down, and then it's sort of like in this weird spiky pattern coming out with what appears to be a feather spear or arrow in her hand, while the guy is sort of holding his hand up to the camera, or where the camera is positioned, rather. As if he's in some kind of trance or prayer or something like that, right? So I don't know about you. If I saw this, I would be very, very uneasy. Should make no mistake about it, especially in Scotland. Scotland, of all places, okay? This is not somewhere in the plains of, Africa or South Africa where you commonly see tribes like this, right? You go to some of the areas where Matt Walsh went for his What is a Woman documentary. Seeing this kind of stuff might be common there, okay? But this is not, you don't think of this when you think of Scotland, right? You think of kilts, you think of bagpipes, you think of, all of a sudden now, used to be a wooden spoon rugby team, now, a tremendously good rugby team, right? You think of all that kind of stuff, right? Not this kind of stuff. But this, I think, is very, very concerning. The fact that now, for some reason, we have parallel societies within our country. But not only that, parallel societies with their own monarchies, which presumably then are going to be operating under their own law. Are they going to be operating under our law? I don't know, but we've seen that. So I'm just getting my computer charger as well. We've seen that with regards to Islamic society, for example. So the more and more Muslims you have coming in, for example, and they openly tell us, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, my laptop charger decided that it wanted to fall on the floor. But Muslims, for example, especially a lot of the clerics and stuff, they openly say that they follow the word of Allah. They follow the law handed down to them, what they think is by Allah, but from the Prophet Muhammad, and they follow his example. And they openly say to our leaders, whether it was, one of them was talking about David Cameron in a video that I saw recently, saying that they can go to hell. Our leaders can go to hell. Those are his exact words. So he's seen here that when these people come in and they start setting up their own foreign enclaves, they're not going to follow our societal customs and our laws and such, and that makes it very, very dangerous. We've seen the atrocities that can happen. So they've set up now this kingdom, and is led by King Atihine and Queen Nandi. I would think that, first off, that this is extremely, insulting, first off, to our own monarchy. If you're a monarchist, by the way, which, I've become more and more disillusioned with the monarchy the more and more I've learned about it. Certainly not what it once was. But this is a massive affront to the authority of the king, who's meant to be the defender of the faith, and the leader, the spearhead of the realm, right? And that we're a united kingdom under his authority, under the Queen's authority, whoever it would be. This is an affront to that. This is a direct affront to that, whether people want to admit it or not, no matter how peaceful these people are or not. This is, say you have a separate kingdom on a land where there is already a king and a monarchy in place, is, again, no matter how small it is a challenge to that authority. It makes you think, if these people are coming in more and more and more in numbers, and this community grows, and not to mention, by the way, these communities tend to be very conservative in nature. They tend to be very pro-natal. They tend to be very pro-family, right? Very traditional in terms of male and female roles. They're going to start multiplying. They will, because that's what their society is conducive to. We decided we didn't want any part of that, and we were going to send ourselves down to the realm, down on the way to extinction, rather, with the rise of feminism, with the rise of societal norms normalizing birth control, dilution of the family, complete destruction of the family, taking away the sacrament of marriage, and taking away the primary faith that took over the nation, at least as far back as about 1,000 years ago in England. You could argue that it goes back a little bit further in Wales to St. David, who existed around the year 500, right? So we decided we didn't want any part of this. So their community is likely going to grow. Ours is going to shrink. And eventually, this is a thing that's going on a wider population scale at the moment. It's going to result in us being taken over, potentially as early as about 20 years' time. Okay, we could see it potentially happening in the 2060s. The government is doing everything possible they can to bring that date forward, right? Because then we won't be able to vote our way out of it. There's many ways we can't vote our way out of what's going on right now anyway. And again, you take that wherever you want to, but that's just a reality in some areas, right? In some areas, in many areas, we still, I think, do have at least some capacity to, get ourselves out of this democratically. In many areas, people don't have that recourse anymore, quite sadly. But this is the thing now. We now have foreign enclaves literally setting up their own kingdoms as an affront to our own monarchy. And this, sadly, is going to need to be dealt with. Whenever this happens throughout history, can you imagine us going out and declaring a kingdom, a separate kingdom somewhere in these people's nations, in Africa or something like that? No, of course they're not going to be happy about that. It's an affront to their government, affront to their power, affront to their people. Okay, no matter how nice they are. No matter how nice they are. And conflict over resources and space is going to happen eventually. Over resources, space, and sovereignty is going to happen eventually. This is a sad truth that we've seen time and time again, but many people still don't want to admit. They do openly as well, go down to the local stream and say prayers to the God. I don't know who the God of this community is, right? But we can imagine it's not anything resembling the Christian God by their customs and stuff like that, right? So again, they're worshipping foreign gods, what some may call idols or whatever, right? This is very, very troubling. This is very, very troubling. And if it continues to grow, because the government's not going to want to do anything about this, because they're probably going to be banking on these people's vote, right? They don't want to bank on the vote of the native peoples anymore because they've alienated them too much. But we're seeing the natural consequences now of mass unchecked immigration, multiculturalism, because under multiculturalism, you can't say anything bad about this, even though eventually it's going to get bigger and it probably is going to eat us alive. Maybe not literally. I'm not saying any of that. But our culture and our people have already been eroded and removed from many areas of what once was our home. You look at many areas of England, you look at the big cities in Wales, you look at many of these areas now. It is coming. It's a slow, creeping wave. So in many areas, it's come like the big cities fell first, and some of the towns around England and stuff like that, like Luton and other places like that, they fell very, very quickly because they were some of the first to be hit by this massive tidal wave, right? This immigration tidal wave, In some areas, it's going to be very, very slow, and as a result, it's going to be a lot harder to notice. But we do need to notice. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we do need to notice. I don't take any pleasure in saying this, because again, people construe it as hateful or whatever, but this is not good, and we need to be able to say that this is not good. Foreign enclaves being set up in our communities are not good, all right? One resident has even said, they do seem nice, I have to say, but there's a sense of uneasiness. We don't know much about their culture, so there's an element of uneasy, but I do think, I think they do play on that. I'm presuming they're talking about, people like myself that are highlighting the dangers that this kind of stuff brings, because we have precedent for this. We have precedent for this in many of the areas where we were told that Islam was peaceful and all of this stuff, and the people coming in, they're just like us, they think just like us. Islam is a religion of peace. And the next thing you know, people's daughters are getting snatched off the street and done horrific things to them in rape den houses. So we do have precedent for this where we don't know much about people's culture, and in many instances it has abjectly manifested itself to be hostile. So people do have reason to fear. Okay, pattern recognition is not actually a bad thing in many instances. In many ways, it's necessary for survival. Okay, if you see somebody going somewhere, and if you see a lot of people going somewhere, people routinely going somewhere, and they get attacked or they get whatever the hell happens to them, or you see that people routinely, our ancestors, think back to the thing, they might have eaten some rotten fruit. The next thing you know, they're dying of some preventable disease. You see that happen enough in the woods and you think, maybe I shouldn't eat fruit that looks like that. Are you then going to call them fruitophobic? Okay, no, because it's basic pattern recognition. And it's an essential survival skill. So when we've seen stuff like this happen multiple times now, many areas of England in particular, and some areas of Scotland, some areas of Wales as well, maybe we should nip it in the bud while it's still small and stop something really big from coming in the future. There's concerns, obviously, they're hunting local wildlife. Now, what are we going to say to these people, that they can't go and do that? Well, you can't do that, because then you'd be seen as what? Racist, or it's in their culture to do so. But if you wanted to go do this, say, for example, you were very, very dissatisfied with the factory farming system that we have. You think it's inhumane. You think it's this, right? And you want to go out. And it's something I do actually have respect for, like in America and stuff like that, like where they go out and they do their own hunting. People go out and they do their own hunting, bow hunting or rifle hunting, and at the very least they're taking responsibility for the animals that they kill, and in many ways that actually makes them try to do it more respectfully than some other ways, especially when you... Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I think I just shut my front... Thought I heard my front door going a minute. I was wondering if it was the Stasi coming to find me. Bear with me 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. Right, apologies about that, ladies and gentlemen. It must have been somebody knocking next door. It sounded like a faint knock on a door, but it wasn't my door. My dog wasn't going or anything like that, as she would have been. So apologies about that. Obviously, you would have seen that as just a slight jump cut, but no big deal. So anyway, as I was saying, if you try to go out and do this, then if you want to go out and hunt your own prey, for example, because you don't like the way that the factory farming system works, you think it's inhumane, you look at the way that they slaughter animals en masse, so they hold them in cages and all of this, you might want to go out and take the responsibility for yourself and actually bring back the food for yourself, not to mention the control of the government that has over the food system. Now, you might want to take back some autonomy for yourself, right? You'll get, all manner of charge put on you if you do that. If you're a native Briton, for example, if you don't play into the system where the government can get their money out of you, right? So if you're completely self-sufficient, if you go out and again, assuming that it's not like a farm animal that's owned by a farmer and stuff like that. And obviously we don't necessarily have too many areas now where they're going out and it's actually true wild animals that nobody has any claim to, right? So presumably you'd be slaughtering a farm animal, which again, there's issues with that. Obviously, I fully understand that. I fully support the farmers and stuff like that as well. But again, you'll get lambasted with all kinds of penalty, right? But not to mention that you will not then need to go out and buy your own food, right? And obviously then the government can't claim the tax on sales and stuff like that, right? So they can't get their fix out of you. They can't have their control over you. So not to mention they don't get their money, but they don't get the control over you because they need control. The government needs control over the food supply in order to have true control over you. Okay, they need to be able to starve you to death in order to have full control. So if you have a means of getting food outside of them, then they will never have full totalitarian control. That's a big point we need to understand, ladies and gentlemen. But you can't say that to these people because you'd be deemed as racist or you'd be deemed as hostile to their culture. Well, if they can do it, why can't we go and do it? Okay, and I'm not necessarily justifying that whatsoever. I'm certainly not justifying hunting for sport or anything like that, right? Killing an animal for no reason, right? I'm not justifying that whatsoever. But again, it's an example. It's fine when some people do it, seemingly, but it's not fine when we do it. Bear in mind, it's our land, and we're the one that came up with these customs, but it's okay for foreigners to violate them. That's what we're seeing time and time again. Again, they've got homemade tools. They're living a very rudimentary lifestyle. So even if, problem is, ladies and gentlemen, even if they're doing no harm right now, what's to say is going to happen when, as I said, their community gets big enough and, their customs may or may not start rubbing up the wrong way with ours. So we need to keep an eye on this. And I'm hoping that, Scotland is going to be able to do some things about it. But their government is so keen on replacing their population and, multiculturalism and diversity that I can't imagine they'll have the backbone to do anything about it. It goes against all their principles and it goes against everything that a lot of the politicians have marketed themselves on for as long as their political career has been active. So I can't imagine they'll do anything about it. But I hope and pray for the people of Scotland in this and hope that it doesn't come back, hope that it doesn't grow and that it starts affecting them more than they have already been affected, because mass migration and multiculturalism is, there's some horror stories that have come out of Scotland. Let's just say that. And speaking of horror stories, the government that we have in this country is one giant horror story. It feels like we're living through one big nightmare at the moment. But a lot of things that, regular people just like us have been through pales in comparison to what happened to Active Patriot recently, or Alan Leggett as his name is. So 2 days ago this was posted. I believe it was 2 days ago he was actually arrested. But an English citizen journalist, Alan Leggett, he goes by ActivePatriotUK on X. He's got just over 200,000 followers. And he's a guy that the establishment is going to fear because his posts routinely reach hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views, right? He's been down at Dover. He's been very vocal. Very, very vocal on the dinghies coming over, documenting it down at Dover. So again, one of the biggest voices in the game that's highlighting the dinghy invasion. He was arrested recently, and that shouldn't surprise you. He was arrested for things that he was posting on X. The Thought Police came down on him, and they came down on him hard because they want people to fear this. They want people like me to fear this. Anybody who's trying to get their voice out there, anybody who's trying to bring attention to these problems, they're trying to scare. They want fear because if you're scared, they will do, you will do rather what they want you to do. So he was arrested for an X post. He was released on bail. He was given some of the most draconian conditions we've ever heard of. He's banned from accessing social media. He's told not to attend protests, and he also has to live and sleep at the same address, basically being placed on house arrest, right? Basically being placed on house arrest. Not to mention, mind you, again, another element of the fear. That's why you see so many videos of police coming to people's houses at 4 o'clock in the morning, because that's exactly the way that the Soviet Union used to do it, to terrorize their citizens. If they were going into one of the apartment blocks to kidnap somebody, to go take them off just to be systematically slaughtered by quota, they would do it at 4 in the morning, because then you'd have to be up all night waiting for the sound of the Black Maria coming outside and that rickety old elevator bringing the soldiers up. You'd hear the boots on the ground floors, and the only time you'd get some respite, is if you heard that lift go past your floor. Right? So if you lived on, say, floor 3 or 4 of this apartment block, if you heard it get to your floor and carry on, you could breathe a sigh of relief, and you could at least get some few precious hours sleep before then, whatever time they'd force you to wake up the next morning, because at least it wasn't you, the poor soul, that was getting taken out that night. But if you heard it stop at your floor, and you heard the boots then come down the bloody hall and assemble outside your door, you knew you were done. And all that would be remaining of you then is the boarded up windows of your apartment. That's all there would be, left of you, basically, as you were taken to the Lubyanka, into the basement with the pinkish red water that was just from the previous victims that had been down there, as you're shot in the back of the head, right? So that's what we're seeing here. That's why in many instances you see police in this country turning up at 4 a.m. They've learned very well from the people that came before. But not only that, when the police turned up to his home, right, when the police turned up to Active Patriot's home, they smashed his front door in and left it exposed for 24 hours until he was released. So here you go, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to bring this image up on screen for you in a moment. This is his door, and this is how police left it. No care for anything that was left inside the residence. No care for, again, people could go in there, they could steal whatever they want. They could squat inside his residence. Political enemies could go in there, they can graffiti it, they can set fires, whatever it is. No concern for any of that. This is how they left his door. You can see on screen, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching it, they bashed his door in, so there's no door handle left on the one side anymore. They just left it completely open. They just left the door to his house completely open. So they've gone heavy-handedly, smashed the door in of a citizen journalist, mind you, for social media posts. They'd never think of doing this to the gang rapists that were systematically raping young British girls. But they did it to a citizen journalist, and they left his home open and exposed for 24 hours till he was released. That's absolutely disgusting. There's no words for how disgusting that things are in this country at the moment. The police also seized hundreds of items of his property that he used to help vulnerable people up and down the country, including rape alarms, right? That's another thing that Alan has been involved in, is trying to help people with, as we'll get on to later on, with these women's rights groups, quote unquote, that have been trying to downplay in my opinion, at least one of the big causes of the massive rise in particularly sexual crimes towards women, right? The immigration epidemic. He tried to help them out in many ways that he could by getting women access, I think usually out of his own pocket, with his donations that he gets from his community, right? So in his X bio, he does have a donor box link to help him with travel costs and stuff like that. But he used it to try and help women get rape alarms and stuff like that. So at least then they had some element of not even so much as defense, but ways to help them out if they ever get into a situation that they've been directly put in danger by the government, right? So he's actually a really, really good guy, it seems. You know, trying to actually help people out. And obviously the government doesn't want that, because obviously it makes them look bad. When a private citizen does this and makes them look bad, and makes the government look bad in this way, they really don't like it, because not only do they want to actively facilitate the invasion, they want to actively facilitate the destruction of our communities, they don't want other people then coming up and protecting people, because it makes them look bad. It not only makes them look evil, but it makes them look inept, right? Because they got to try and keep up this facade that they're trying to do what they can, right? So when a private citizen comes along and does a better job, right? That's why they hate Elon Musk so much, for restoring free speech on X and allowing people to see the truth of things on X. And that's why it became the #1 news app in the world, especially in Britain, because the media and the government media could not be trusted with true narratives. They were shown to be a propaganda arm, right? And they hated being shown that they were not telling the truth, because it made them look either inept or evil, or in some instances both, right? Because a lot of, you know, the people behind it are not very good anyway. But they hate being exposed. They hate being exposed. That's why they hate Active Patriot, and they hate the fact that he has such a wide audience, right? They're not particularly worried about people like me and like that at the moment, because I'm very, very small, even though, you know, you don't need to have a truly massive following to be targeted. Something that happened recently, which is an absolute travesty, was that Michelle, whom I share a lot of her posts on X as well, she goes by Shell quadruple 6, I believe. She's a survivor of rape inside a Pinderfields Hospital, after she went in for a procedure in which she fell and hurt her back. And when she was at her most vulnerable, she was attacked, I believe by several staff. She was raped and sexually abused inside the hospital. The hospital's covered it up at every single turn, according to Michelle's allegations, all the way coming down from the top, right? And I've spoken about the corruption inside the hospitals with regards to some people that I've spoken to, Justine Winter, Lisa Peregrine, Victoria Rickson, right? All of these whistleblowers have spoken about how bad the NHS is, but the police recently raided her home and arrested her as well. She was also banned from social media for trying to get justice for being raped, mind you, and for highlighting the epidemic of it that's going on inside our hospitals, where, again, the news headline keeps getting flashed up on social media all the time. There's a minimum of 6,500 victims all across the UK. Truly, truly, truly disgusting. And that makes you think there's obviously no end of victims. Brings me back to talking about the grooming gangs yet again, because somebody posted a thing which I want to bring up again, and I put a statement out about it, that the reality of it, if we go by even some conservative estimates, because a lot of us forget when we talk about like 1,400 cases in Rotherham or 1,400 victims in Rotherham, those girls weren't just raped once, right? They were passed around like, for lack of a better term, they were passed around like a cigarette, right? In some of these houses, being potentially raped by double-digit men in a night, right? So if we say that, where's the post actually? I'll get the actual post, because I believe I bookmarked it and I put up a statement about it, because it was shocking when you do the math, right? This person done the math on it, and when you do the math, it was truly shocking, right? A continuous average of one rape occurring every hour, I believe it was, for 16 straight years. So Kelly J. Keane posted this, and this, again, not quite relevant, but again, the government doesn't want you to know this, so we might as well go with it. People talk about the Rotherham grooming scandal. The figure that usually gets reported is 1,400 victims, which comes from the J report, and this is between 1997 and 2013. But those 1,400 weren't just abused once. If we take a cautious average of 100 assaults per victim, right, you've got to take into account how long some of these girls were kept in captivity for. 100 assaults is well within the realm of possibility, right? You've got to take into account they were doing this daily, and they were being gang raped and tortured like this on the daily, right? Works out as nearly 140,000 separate rapes. Let's take that, right, over 16 years. Works out as nearly 9,000 a year, or 24 per day for 16 years. Let that sink in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. That is a continuous average of one child rape occurring every single hour of every single day for 16 straight years. As a cautious, conservative estimate. So we've got atrocities like no other in the UK. It makes you think then at least somebody was actually trying to give rape alarms to women, right? The custody sergeant, hourhowever, and this is something that does need to be drawn attention to, because at the end of this episode, we're going to be talking about Pervy Plod backpocketing some young, I believe it was a young girl, I believe it was, or it might have been a teenager. I got to think. Let me just double check before I. Let me just double check. Does it actually say, right, okay, I'm not going to say that, but there was a lady's underwear whom this officer stole from a lady's room, back-pocketed, and he was caught on camera doing so. So again, at least some police, however, are coming out and saying how bad that things are, right? Custody sergeant said he didn't want to impose the conditions on him. However, he was overruled by the superintendent, who claimed they had intelligence to suggest Alan is part of a group that has violent intentions. I don't know of any evidence, obviously, for that. I would imagine it would have made itself manifest by now. There's been so many instances where he would have had great opportunity to. The group, why didn't it show up at the Epping protest? Why didn't it show up at any of the other hotel protests that are going on recently? Why didn't it show up at Britannia, right? This supposed group that has violent intentions, right? Surely, with the climate that we have, surely something like that would have manifested now. So I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but people will make up all manner of different things. We've seen the police are not above lying whatsoever. Sergeant said, everyone has the right to protest. I'm not sure how I can impose these conditions on you. There was a video that came out the other week of the police having to turn up to, I believe it was somebody's door, serving some kind of social media complaint notice or whatever it was. And they said, I don't want to do this. I'm sorry. I don't even know why I'm here. And they're laughing about it. Okay, it's no laughing matter, but at least some you could see in the force, especially the people on the ground that are being forced to carry out these. A lot of them, they understand what they're doing is wrong. They understand that they're in a a hard place, right? They're caught between a rock and a hard place, because if they say anything, they're liable to get just replaced, because they're completely replaceable, right? They'll be replaced with the next person that comes along across the fucking boat, right? So they've got an infinite number of people that are just waiting to take dominion, right? Because the police will fill anybody that has a spine and stands up. The police will fill that position with somebody that wants to do worse, right? That will toe the line, and odds are will probably be worse, right? You know, the classic thing where if you remove the devil and you don't invite God in, the devil will come back and bring the spirits will come back and bring 7 spirits worse than themselves. They'll just bring another person in that's worse than the person that was there before. So it makes you wonder, a lot of these people, they're probably staying in there. They're probably staying in the force because at least then they feel as though they are able to do some good with what they're able to do. And I can sometimes be a little bit harsh on the police. Again, speaking when you see examples of officers like we'll talk about later, you got to think that some part of it lies with the responsibility of the officers on the ground, of course, but they're coming from orders on top. This goes all the way up to the top. This goes to people like Mark Rowley and in the government that are bringing this ideological rot in, and they are hell-bent on the destruction of this country. Make no mistake about it. The people at the top, ruling from the top down with an iron fist, are hell-bent on the destruction of this country. And that's why they not only arrest citizen journalists like Alan, but they'll do things like this. So you don't know if you've seen with Operation Raise the Colours that is going on recently, some patriots in England are going out and painting St. George's crosses on roundabouts. Roundabout really is a perfect example of where this stuff can fit in. All you got to do is put a red cross on the roundabout, right? Because the roundabout is just a white painting on the floor anyway. Bear in mind, this is in Birmingham, right? Birmingham, where you have rubbish dumps on every single corner where people just go out and put rubbish. The council can't come out and get the rubbish together. They can't deal with rat infestations. They can't deal with potholes, mind you. But the minute people come out and put either Union Jack or English flags on lampposts, perfectly fine if it's a pride flag, or if it's a Palestinian flag, or if it's a Pakistani flag, or an Indian flag, or any other flag that's not of this country, mind, or in this case, England, right? So you can't put the St. George's Cross on anything. You can put any other manner of foreign cross on it. It seems that they'll begrudgingly tolerate the Union Jack. But the minute you put a St. George's Cross on a roundabout, just regular people going out and putting St. George's Crosses on things as a manner of, or as a painting of resistance, and that's how you know you're an occupied country, by the way, when your own flag is a banner of resistance. The council will come out the next day and scrub it off. So here's that footage for you, ladies and gentlemen. They can't deal with rats. They can't deal with rubbish. They can't deal with all manner of different crime going on. We spoke about it in the previous episode, which came out today, where the guy, the Pakistani gentleman, I think it was, or the Muslim gentleman, was saying that some of these areas, some of the worst for armed militant Pakistanis, right, can't deal with any of this, but they can deal with a St. George's Cross on the roundabout like that. So you can just see. So it's only a 4-second video, but you can see there it's a scrubber, and it's scrubbing the St. George's Cross off of the roundabout. I'll just put it on this freeze frame. You can see it here, ladies and gentlemen. This is the edge of the St. George's Cross here. You can see there's some of the paint that's starting to come off. They'll come out and they'll do this as a matter of priority, but they won't deal with potholes. They won't deal with anything else, which makes you think, If, for example, the citizens of England or the citizens of seemingly of Birmingham in particular in this instance, if they were to paint the St. George's Cross on a pothole, right, would then the council come out and actually fill it in? Would the council actually come out and fill it in as a matter of priority? Makes you think. It's kind of a little bit of game of chess you can play here, where if they're a bit more strategic about where they put their St. George's crosses, maybe things will actually get done. Maybe if they put the St. George's crosses on the bins and they paint the St. George's crosses on the rats, like I've seen them do with some of the sheep, right, that they've done. I don't advise that, by the way, because obviously rats, highly infectious animals, don't want anybody going getting diseases and stuff like that. But if they were to paint the St. George's crosses on the animals and on the rubbish and all stuff like that, would the council then actually get rid of them? Makes you think, right? Maybe we should try gaming the system a little bit. But this is just truly, truly disgusting. And this is the thing. They want to stamp out all kind of national pride or, you know, denotion that the English are a distinct ethnic group, right? That the English are a distinct ethnic group. That's what they want to stamp out. They need to stamp that out because in order to get this diversity, multicultural narrative across, they need to make it seem that anybody can just be British or anybody can just be English, right? They need to get that across when, no, sorry, not everybody can, because it's a distinct ethnic category. But this is an example of the government trying to do everything they can to benefit people that will not thank them for it. They will not thank them for it. But they're banking on their votes. They're banking on their votes, right? They're banking on using democracy to destroy democracy, which is why they'll also, for example, in Portsmouth, will give asylum seekers, quote unquote, the following benefits, which is just truly, truly disgusting. So this is from Guido Fawkes. So this will be linked down below as well. Asylum seekers in Portsmouth, again, asylum seekers in inverted quotes, because you don't see it like how I saw it in the book The Last Girl, for example, where people like Nadia, for example, having to be smuggled across the border into places like Kurdistan eventually from ISIS, right, where they're trying to get a young girl out one at a time painstakingly through smuggling networks and all these kind of things, right? No, this is a dingy invasion full of military-aged men being facilitated by France in pursuit of a wider replacement agenda, funded by the big groups of the UN, the EU, all of these places, right? It's completely different. It's inversion of charity, or it's a gross inversion of charity. They're being offered 40% off beach hut hires. Not to mention, also, they're not only being offered beach hut hires, 40% off for 2 weeks a year, they're being offered 40% off paddleboarding, sailing, and kayaking, 50% off swimming and gym lessons, 50% off table tennis and climbing. Bear in mind, you can't even get a youth club in these areas nowadays. You can't even get a youth club for your kids nowadays. But in these hotels and everything like that, they'll set up clubs for these people. They play table football, they play air hockey, all of these things. They'll bend over backwards for these people using your taxes, and you have to start wondering why. You have to start wondering why. 50% off learning about D-Day, discounts on tickets to the cinema, and 10% off Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They want to make sure that their lessons, in order to make them into a foreign fighting force, are somewhat affordable to them, even though it all comes at taxpayer expense anyway. So this is truly, truly disgusting. Truly, truly disgusting, because you pay for all of this stuff. You pay for all of this stuff, and you toil every single fucking day with your labor. Do you get any of this? No, they just give it away to people that never earned it and are coming here in many instances to wage more of the jihad that we have seen. So the government is taking your money that you break your fucking back for every single day, even taking out of your grandparents' fucking pensions in many instances, or your parents' pensions to give to these people. Meanwhile, they will use it for no good reason whatsoever. They'll use it in no good method whatsoever, and they'll actively flaunt it in your face. They'll actively flaunt it in your face and then probably go out and try and trespass on somebody's property and rape a young girl. That's what they'll probably do for the most part, right? Truly, truly disgusting. But again, the problem then, I'm not espousing hate to any one individual. The problem then is our own government. The problem is always coming back to our own government for deciding that they don't want to work for their constituents anymore. Part of this wider Cloward Piven strategy, they want to replace us with a voting bloc that they believe will be more conducive to them getting re-elected. They're not basing this on popularity with their own people anymore. They're doing this purely for re-election to maintain their powers. They know that if they were ousted out of power, well, things are going to go very, very badly for them with how much they betrayed the British people. That's what they're concerned about now. They're doing every single thing possible. The only thing is, ladies and gentlemen, it's resulting in more and more discontent on daily. Things are heating up. It's a tinderbox ready to go off, and that tinderbox very nearly went off with children inside in Northern Ireland recently. This is extremely troubling. So Northern Ireland, today this was posted, there was a petrol bomb thrown into a pub, what seems to be just a regular Northern Irish person, which is very, very concerning. Again, people just losing their minds with everything that's going on. This mass psychosis, deliberately, with all the propaganda and psyop has taken over. But again, is this a person that was let out on compassionate release for something when they were obviously potentially going to go and do this again? Who knows, right? With our woke judicial systems that we have. The incident took place at the Toby Jug pub on Irish Street in County Armagh. There were children inside at the time. So you see this now, a person comes up with a petrol bomb, throws it inside, and then just nonchalantly walks off. And it looks like some people that flood out after they realize what's been thrown inside. There's children that flood out as well. But it looks like the community inside is going to go chase him down. And he turns around and looks to have something in his hands, like some kind of weapon or something like that. This just shows how cold and evil some people can be. The banality of evil that exists. This guy just walks up, throws it in, and walks off as if he just put a letter in a letterbox, right? This is horrendous. But the video will be coming on screen for you now momentarily, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just sorting out the volume at the moment because it's quite a loud video from what I understand. But here you go. It's coming on screen for you now. This is terrifying. You can see he walks up, lights it, takes it inside. The guy starts running, as you can see up there, and then just comes out, just walks out in a moment. You'll see him now. There you go, just walks out as if nothing happened. Hands in his pockets. See, they come out, there's a child, and there you go. He looks to brandish something. So yeah, they actually mistakenly run back inside, but you can see there a young girl running away with presumably her mother. There's this red smoke that comes out at the top. This appears to be maybe one of the acts that was performing inside the pub. This is terrifying. It makes you think, is it actually an Irish person? It's hard to see. Is it actually a Northern Irish person? From what I can see, the person is definitely of a lighter skin complexion. It's not obvious that he's going to be, one of the numerous, dinghy migrants that we see coming across. This could have been, for some reason, just a Northern Irish person that's just gone completely off the edge and has committed some kind of atrocity. So this person needs to be found, needs to be locked up, and really for the rest of his fucking life. You can never be allowed out in polite society again. Turns out it is a foreigner, then he needs to be removed from Irish society entirely. This is absolutely terrifying. But if you know anything more about this, then obviously please do let me know. But I'll try and keep you updated on this as we learn more. I hope the police find him, obviously, and I hope we learn more about who this person is and who done this. I just hope please hope and pray that anybody that's injured, I haven't heard if anybody's injured at the moment, but that anybody who's affected by this, obviously the people that are inside, the young kids and such, pray for them that they aren't left with any lasting impacts or anything like that. And pray that stuff like this doesn't happen in the future, right? This serves nobody. This serves absolutely nobody. Speaking of serving absolutely nobody and praying for the children, we can pray that, thank God, this lady's father was home, because this shows how committed some of these people, like I said, that are coming into this country that really have no business being in this country at all, at any point at all, will go to try and attack women. So I think I made a mistake of saying that this was a young girl before. It is a young girl, but it's a 17-year-old teenager. So again, young woman, let's say that. Migrant climbed 2 stories to get into a room to attack this young girl, or to attack this young lady. Luckily, her dad was there. This guy climbed up 2 stories, and when he got to the balcony, so I believe this is potentially a hotel or some kind of apartment complex with balconies, right? Gets to the balcony, starts undressing on the balcony, and then the girl screams, and luckily the guy's father comes out, and I believe the guy ends up falling back off. He tries to escape, falls back off, and actually breaks his back on the fall, which You know, I'm not going to be crying any tears for this guy. Let's make no mistake about it. But he's a Moroccan national with a deportation order, mind you, climbed a building to rape this girl. Here's Remix News coming with the news report.
Un Marocain sous OQTF a escaladé un immeuble pour violer une jeune fille mineure. On vous explique tout. Les faits se sont déroulés ce dimanche 10 août à Villeneuve-d'Ornon, près de Bordeaux. C'est sur les coups de 7 heures du matin qu'une jeune fille de 17 ans a eu la désagréable surprise de retrouver un homme quasiment nu dans sa chambre. Selon les éléments de l'enquête, le mis en cause serait un Marocain de 30 ans et sous obligation de quitter le territoire français. Il aurait escaladé à main nue 2 étages de la résidence où il est hébergé, puis se serait déshabillé sur le balcon avant d'entrer dans le logement. La jeune fille, choquée, a hurlé et son père est directement arrivé. Mais en tentant de redescendre la façade pour s'enfuir, le Marocain est tombé et s'est cassé une vertèbre. Il a rapidement été pris en charge par les urgences et après son hospitalisation, il a été placé en garde à vue ce jeudi 14 août. L'homme a totalement nié les faits malgré l'évidence et sera convoqué devant la justice pour violation de domicile et tentative d'agression sexuelle. Son expulsion de la France pourrait toutefois être décidée avant son jugement. En attendant, l'homme a été placé sous contrôle judiciaire.
So, just recap that for you, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, it was entirely in French. So, pardon me. A Moroccan national climbs up 2 stories, and he said he denied all wrongdoing. He tried to say that he denied all wrongdoing. Here's him on the side of this building. Again, this was shown in the actual, video itself, in the report itself. This is him on the side of the building doing exactly what they said that he was doing. So how he can deny all wrongdoing, I will absolutely never know. But again, if they feel that they can get away with it, they can. With the woke judiciary that we have nowadays, odds are he probably will get away with it. He probably get away with a slap on the wrist and something like that, and taxpayer-funded healthcare for his broken back. So he climbs up, starts undressing on the balcony to try and get at this 17-year-old lady, or 17-year-old girl. He tried to climb down the facade to escape, and he fell and broke a vertebra. And then obviously he's treated then presumably at French taxpayer expense, right? This is the kind of cultural enrichment that we've allowed to come in. And I hope that he is deported. First off, obviously, I hope that he is deported. But I hope the trial and hopefully the conviction does come before he is deported, purely because it'd be good for his fellow countrymen to know what he did when he goes back. Because, obviously, a lot of these places, they now, especially, crimes of this nature, more so towards young women in many instances, some of these countries, maybe not Morocco as far as I know, but especially like the UAE and stuff like that, they are far harsher on this kind of stuff than we are nowadays. They're far harsher on this kind of stuff. And that's why a lot of them plead that they can't go back to their home nations if they've done these heinous crimes, especially towards children, because of how they'll be treated in their home country, because of the fact that they'll basically be fresh meat for the angry mob that wants to, lynch them basically back home in their own country. I'm sorry, it's not our problem. Shouldn't have come over here and raped a little girl then, should you? You should have thought about that before. You knew that it was wrong. A lot of these people, you got to think, they're not even saying... I hate the excuse that a lot of these people give, which is that they say, I'm sorry, I didn't even know it was illegal. Well, I'm sorry, you didn't even know that it was wrong? You didn't even know that it was wrong? Doesn't matter if something's illegal necessarily, because something can be illegal and still be a good. Something can be illegal and still be a good, because something that's a matter of law is something that's been passed by humans, and humans can be wrong. So sometimes you can have laws prohibiting things like speech, and that law is a bad thing, because speech is a good thing, at least for the most part anyway. If it's levied at somebody that's a threat, or if a threat, or if it's harassment of some kind, or depending on what you say, the things you say might not be good, but the ability to speak is certainly good, because the ability to speak is the ability to think. So those things are good, and then when a government tries to inhibit those through laws, it's a very, very bad thing. That's why we have so much furore about free speech in Britain nowadays, because, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, there must be something in this room, because, the environment that I film these in is not the best. Let's just say that. Probably not the healthiest. Just a couple of fruits to thank from socialism there, in my opinion. But, it's not the best, should we say, and there's problems in this room that need to be sorted out, namely with regards to the insulation and stuff like that. And I think that's why, is when I'm recording these, I get a very, very itchy nose, right? And I get very, very irritated in my nose. I think it's because of that, right? So in case anybody wonders, I'm not doing this because, I'm on drugs or anything like that, or I'm on speed. I'm on a lot of caffeine today. I'm on a little bit of pre-workout. So maybe that has something to do with it. But very often in these podcasts, you'll see me, I'm constantly like rubbing my nose and stuff like that, because it gets so so itchy. And I think it's just the environment in this room, but it's the only place I have to do this, right? And ultimately, this has to be a success because I basically have no other recourse now. I basically have no other recourse thanks to my political opinions. But anyway, you a bad person for saying you don't want more of this in your country? No, of course not. Of course not. You will be. You will be, however, in the eyes of apparently 100 quote-unquote women's rights groups. And I've got some troubling stats to go over. Okay, that one might be... I think I might need a bit of a nose hair trim. I might need a bit of a mustache trim as well. You might be in the eyes of 100 women's rights groups, quote-unquote, which say linking sex to migration is dangerous racist diversion. In a letter to Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper, organisations including Rape Crisis England and Wales, the End Violence Against Women Coalition and Refuge called on ministers to stand up to the quote-unquote dangerous narrative. So, more than 100 women's rights groups, according to the Mirror, have warned racist attempts to link sexual violence with immigration are putting victims at risk. Kind of hard to make that case in the UK when you look at the ethnic makeup and the reasons behind the why so many young girls were raped and in some instances murdered as well. It's quite hard to make that case. But I've got a little bit more to go into about some of the women that are spearheading these organisations, as you can see why they'll say this in a moment. Rape Crisis England and Wales, the End Violence Against Women Coalition and Refuge are among the organisations warning anti-migrant groups and politicians are, quote, hijacking, and quote, survivors' trauma. I'd argue that they are doing the same. I would argue that they are doing the same to fuel more of the narratives that have prevented women from actually getting justice in a lot of these cases, right? They've signed a letter to Keir Starmer and Home Secretary Yvette Cooper warning that sexual abuse must not be used for political gain. Completely agree. That's why I actually don't like a lot of Reform MPs, particularly Nigel Farage, because he said that he was going to fund a private inquiry into the rape gangs. He did so because it was politically advantageous at the time. Then it seemed that he, it wasn't long after he brought Zaya Yusuf on, I believe, and all of a sudden then that disappeared, and Nigel has made no claims since, or at least no effort since, to fund a private inquiry, despite his ex-colleague Rupert Lowe doing so to whole manner of support and hopefully success. And Nigel hasn't said anything about it. He hasn't even tried to draw attention to it. You think if he actually cared about that issue, he would put aside all political differences or personal differences, personal grievances with Rupert Lowe, and sign on to the motion and voice his support for it, but he hasn't. He views this issue as a political football, which is why I really don't like him for that. And those who spread misinformation must be held to account. But let's have a look, for example, at the End Violence Against Women campaign. Done a little bit of sleuthing. So if you have a look at the End Violence Against Women campaign website, this is about the End Violence Against Women Coalition. We're a group of feminist organisations and experts from across the UK working to end violence against women and girls in all its forms. Made up of 163, now again, violence against women, you've got to think about what they mean when it says the violence against women. Anything you say that's in any way negative about women at all in these instances, these groups will try to screw as violence against women, especially if you happen to be a white male, right? Because you'll see a lot of these adopt the intersectionality framework, and everything then has to be weaved in together in this leftist narrative, right? Anti-racism has to be weaved in. There'd be anti-colonialism weaved in there as well. There'd be the whole trans agenda weaved in there, which is why a lot of these groups, which you think are for women, they're also for men who masquerade as women as well, because these guys don't have a fucking clue what they're doing. Makes you think we have more of these groups than ever before, and we have more of another problem, which we talked about before, than ever before, but yet the problem seems to be getting worse and worse. We have more of these groups and coalitions than ever before, but the problem seems to be getting worse. Maybe, just maybe, they're going about it the wrong way. Made up of 163 specialist women support services, researchers, activists, survivors, and NGOs, we believe that violence against women is not inevitable, and work to tear up the systems that enable it and build a fairer world in its place. You don't see a lot of these groups going on about the Islamically motivated grooming gangs and the ethno-religiously motivated grooming gangs. You don't see these groups going on about those. So, who are we? The End Violence Against Women Coalition was formed in 2005 by frontline support services, survivors, and researchers because we are louder together. It's a classic Marxist organization taking an intersectional, anti-racist approach like I said, ladies and gentlemen, the air is not great in this room. We work to transform the political and social systems that enable violence against women. We drive social change through campaigning and shaping policy, and by challenging the wider cultural attitudes that tolerate and normalize this abuse. So you'd think that these people would, I hope at least, I don't know if they actually have, but I would hope that they would talk about the Yazidi sex abuse, for example. The Yazidi women that were kept as Sabiya and suffered horrific sexual abuse. The hands of ISIS, for example. I would imagine they would talk about that, even if they would mention the underlying motivations. But obviously they can't really make the case for the anti-racism, the anti-racist narrative when you have about 85+% of victims being young white girls, and you have a good, 80%, 90%, even more in some cases. But take, for example, Operation Stovewood in Rotherham, where you had 63% of the cases were Pakistanis, right? Pakistanis, and they only made up about 2.5 to 4% of the population. That doesn't bode well for your anti-racist narrative, right? Again, it's all about oppressive structures. Oppressive structures. Our vision is a society where women and girls can live their lives free from violence and the threat of violence. So I'll put it this way, evil people are going to exist. Evil people are going to exist. But when you try to shape and shift everything around to say that only one group of people can be evil and the rest are all somehow oppressed, even though a large group of those that are quote unquote oppressed are doing the oppressing, all of a sudden you see why maybe they don't get the results that they're looking for. But shouldn't surprise you, this initiative is spearheaded pretty much completely by women. And I don't necessarily have anything against that because, a lot of the rape crisis centers, for example, they pretty much have to be staffed by women. Because if you've just been raped or been one of the girls that have been horrifically treated by rape gangs in this disgusting, sordid, drug den, basically, and you get rescued, say, and you get brought to one of these clinics, the last face you're going to want to see is a man, obviously. So you can fully appreciate that. But in this instance, it's the women again, and this is the biggest thing that I see. It's a lot of women, because of the lies that they've been sold by via feminism, are now doing these things against their own best interests. Against their own best interests. Because at least when men and women work together, we understand that men are the protectors. But when you remove men from their duty, in many instances it's been women that have removed themselves from their own duty that caused men to remove themselves from theirs. That's why feminism is not just a women problem. Feminism brought out the worst in men and the worst in women, right? Because men, the best are brought out in men when they're fulfilling their role as the patriarch and the head of the family. And women are doing the best when they fulfill their role as the matriarch of the family. Because everything has to revolve around the family. It's the bedrock of society. You get the best out of both men and women when they understand that, I promise you. And that's why feminism has been such a destructive lie, because it took a constructive union and a procreative union and turned it against itself. Turned it against itself, made it a destructive union where both of these things, they've both become inverted. The responsibilities and duties have both become inverted. And then no surprise then when the one construct that was responsible for the entirety of society pretty much is inverted and destroyed, it's no surprise when society gets destroyed then as well. But you're going to have a look at one of the people on this board, for example. So let's have a look at Andrea Simon, for example, who's the director of this organization. Executive Director at End Violence Against Women Coalition, Andrea has worked in ending the violence against women and girls sector. Again, why is this a sector? The fact that we need a sector for this, right? We never needed a sector for this before. What changed? What changed? We'll go over that in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Since 2017, she was appointed as this campaign's director in January 2021 to lead the organization's influential work to improve responses to women and girls at risk of experiencing abuse. It's a UK-wide coalition of more than 150 women's organizations. Researchers and experts are working to end all forms of violence against women and girls. Here's the thing. I'm going to read this now. And again, I want you to think back to where this woman is based and maybe how these ideas have worked out in practice with some of the things that we talked about 1 or 2 episodes ago. Andrea brings an intersectional, feminist, and anti-racist approach to her work as a leading campaigner in this space. She is a member of the London Policing Board and co-chair of the London Violence Against Women and Girls Board at the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. London, the place where currently, at least based on a headline, which obviously I saw a little while ago, it's probably worse now. There's a rape occurring every hour, or rape reported every hour in London. I think it's safe to say the intersectional and the intersectional feminist and anti-racist approach is not working. Everything has gotten worse. Every single thing has gotten worse. If you say that only one group, in particular white men, can be the oppressors, because that's what this is, it's a Marxist construct, so you have to have a manifestation of bourgeoisie and proletariat. If it's always that the white men are the bourgeoisie, the oppressors in this instance, you will ignore all manner of abuse and overlook all manner of different things to fit that narrative. You'll cook the books. You won't report certain things. You'll lie by omission, right? There's no surprise then when you don't get the outcomes that you're looking for, because you've deliberately decided that you're not going to follow up on certain things, or certain things cannot be true despite the fact that they are, because they do not fit into your framework. You then decide that it's reality that's wrong, not the framework. No, maybe it's your framework that's wrong. Another charity that's listed on this, a quote-unquote charity, I believe it is, quote-unquote organization that's listed on this is Quetzal, however you say it. I believe that it deals with, partly deals with child sexual abuse as well. But again, where is it? It was listed on here. Where did I have it? Is it here? Here you go. So I think this is from the same one. Oh no, this is from a different one, I believe it is. Or is this something else that they do? It's there's something known as Own My Life. Is it these guys that do this? I might be getting this slightly wrong, or it might be another group that is listed with. Yeah. Here we go. I think I've got it here somewhere. Here it is. Part of the Women's Liberation Collective. So again, that is straight out of. So I'm not going to go over Quetzal. I wanted to go over this because this is another one. This is another one that I wanted to have a look at, because all of these groups, the reason why they're not working, all of these groups, they're all coming from the same intersectional Marxist framework, and it's completely ignoring many avenues where the problems are coming from. Because yes, white men do abuse girls. Yes, of course they do. You do have rapes committed by white men. So absolutely. When you decide it's only committed by white men and only they can be the oppressors, and you ignore things like ethno-religious motivations from other groups, it's no surprise then when a bunch of criminals feel emboldened, because you're not going to pursue them purely for reasons of things like race and ethnicity or any other factors of the Equality Act, which is why I wanted to bring up this one, because the core values of another one of these groups, liberation and equality. Again, all of these terms that have been drastically taken out of their original context and made to mean things that are outright destructive to not only these people but society as a whole. You have this from their state. So this is from, as I said, the Women's Liberation Collective, I believe it's called, headed up by Natalie Collins, right? Women are oppressed by men and misogyny. Black people are oppressed by white people and white supremacy. Lesbian and gay people are oppressed by heterosexual ideals. Transgender people are oppressed by transphobia. And disabled people are oppressed by a society designed by and for able-bodied people. Despite the fact that those people, we make all sorts of accommodations for disabled people. Go to anywhere else in the world, go to some of the undeveloped world and see a wheelchair ramp for disabled users and stuff like that, and courtesy cars, potentially even for some people that have, in many ways, when you have a look at some people, eaten their way into so-called disability. But again, we won't talk about that. That's a conversation for another time. And yes, there are people that genuinely do need those things, right? Okay, my girlfriend's mother is one of them. Okay, so I fully understand that. But again, where it says here, when a women's rights group is campaigning on behalf of transgender or men, that tells you all of the absurdity you need to know and why these groups are not getting the results that they want. They're completely inverted. They're completely inverted because they can't even, they wouldn't even be able to define what a woman is. They wouldn't even be able to define what a woman is. Because again, you cannot do so inside of this leftist framework where everything is a social construct, even biological things are a social construct. You can't do it. So again, it just goes to show in many instances how silly and how stupid these people are. They don't even know that they're not. They don't even know how little they know. But yet these are the ones that are saying now that you shouldn't be linking immigration or migration with these people, with crime rather. And it's something that other women, luckily, do seem to notice, because this is something that came out of a Freedom of Information request, and David Atherton posted it, for statistics of rape in the Bournemouth area. And then what was her name? Sorry. Morgan from the Women's Safety Initiative, who I talked about before. She was the one that posted online about the KFC incident where the young girls were being harassed by a group of foreign men who even went into the toilet, were banging on the toilet door saying they didn't care that they were 16. They wanted to do absolutely horrendous things to them. When the girls tried to leave, the car came back around. They waited for them. They were basically stalking them, and the police did nothing. Rape statistics in the Bournemouth area. In 2011, you had 61 offences. You had 98 the year before. You had 61 in 2011. Right? And then in 2021, they rose to 362, which is nearly a 6-fold increase. It makes you think, what changed? By the way, from 2022 to 2023, it remained relatively stable at that point, 327 and 342. And then at the date of this request, I don't know when it was in 2024 that this was submitted, there was 28 recorded at that time. But if I flash this up on screen for you, you'll see that that would be very, very misleading. You'll think that something would have happened in 2024 that resulted in no rape offences being committed or whatever. It's just because it's at that date at that point, because you'll have a look on screen now, the violent offences were also down substantially. And as you notice, the violent offences have gone up in seemingly quite a linear fashion as well. So from 2010, you had 3,696 violent offences, but not including rape. And then in 2023, you had a top of 8,668 offences and 661 so far in that time frame in 2024. So truly, truly stark. It makes you think, what would have changed? What may have changed? During that same period, immigration grew by 262.4%. So forgive people for thinking that they may be a link. Correlation doesn't always equal causation, but we have so many examples that we can use now. This is just another one of them. That maybe the 100 women's, quote-unquote, women's rights groups may have it wrong. Maybe all of our political leaders have it wrong. They don't have it wrong for what they want to do. So obviously they're perfectly happy with all of this going on as long as they get the additional political power that comes with it. People like Julie James, the MS, saying the idea that we have uncontrolled mass migration is nonsense. The thousands you see in some instances coming across on the boats to Dover every single day is apparently nonsense, according to Julie James. But you've got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, that this is a mistake that a lot of people make. That they think, they see the videos of boats coming in at Dover, they think in Wales, if you live on the other end of Wales, it's not gonna affect you. You do forget, it seems, that we are landlocked together. Do you often forget that we are landlocked together, right? That we can't just, all of a sudden decide that we're going to move away from England and that they can't cross into our country anymore. That just because they're landing at Dover doesn't mean that within a day or within a couple of days that they could be in Cardiff or they could be in Swansea or they could be in all manner of, they could potentially be in the house next to you. Just in a couple of days, because the government evicted a single mother with 6 children and made room for, Abdullah and Ahmed and all of the others coming in on the boats, right? So yes, it is a massive problem, but our politicians will never say as such because they've campaigned on this multicultural diversity narrative for as long as they've been in office, and they need to keep to that because it's a religious dogma. They need to take it as the religious dogma that it is. They can't come out and admit that now, though, because they think, well, hang on, you made your career off of this for 20, 30, however many it was years, right? And now you're saying something different, but we've upended our entire society for this. We've upended our entire society for this. And you realize, oh, we were lied to. We were lied to by the feminists. We were lied to by the atheists. We were lied to by our politicians. We were lied to by everybody. But here is Julie James, for example, pretending that we don't have problems.
The idea that we currently have uncontrolled mass migration is frankly nonsense. It's an extremely racist narrative, and actually all it does is hamper our work to encourage victims to come forward, as does actually stigmatising people who don't come through the proper immigration routes. And the idea that we currently have uncontrolled mass migration is frankly nonsense. The level of immigration here in Wales is tiny, as we've had, as I've had previous experience of debating with this particular member.
So again, just outright denying this problem. If you have a problem, easiest way to get around it, just outright deny it. Just outright deny it. Not only that, where she mentions again, where these politicians are showing exactly where their eggs, what basket their eggs are in, where their bread's being buttered, is the fact that you say, oh, we stigmatise people that come into the country. Was it unconventional? Stigmatizing people who don't come through the proper immigration routes. Stigmatizing people that don't follow the law. Oh, yeah, don't stigmatize people that don't follow the law, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, you see that person shoplifting brand new Yeezys or whatever, or going in and taking a bunch of stuff off the Tesco shelf. Oh, don't stigmatize them for not following the proper procedure with checkout, right? Don't stigmatize them for not following the proper procedure, right? You see somebody that's running naked through the streets or walking naked through the streets, or, having a Johnny Quango in a bush, right, as kids are walking past. Oh, don't stigmatize him for not understanding proper social custom, right? You know, the guy who was nude on the tube a couple of episodes ago, where we talked about now the police are going to arrest the quote-unquote vigilantes, right? You know, you shouldn't stigmatize. Now, there should be things that are stigmatized. There should absolutely be things that are stigmatized. It's the fact that we don't stigmatize certain things anymore that's led to the downfall of society, right? Because there are strict things that cause society to be able to function, right? The family being the main one. Family and faith. 2 F's, if you will. Fortissimo. That's a music joke if you get that one. But those are the things that were the bedrock of society, or are the bedrock of society. They'll never not be the bedrock of society, let's face that. And everything's being done to weaken those institutions and to weaken those constructs, if you will. Because, nothing is sacred anymore. Nothing is sacred anymore because you can't stigmatize. So you hear politicians talking like this, ladies and gentlemen. And it's good when in many instances the evil just seems to manifest in how they look. Understand, they're not on your side. They're not acting in your best interest. They'll lie to your face. They'll piss on you and tell you that it's raining. And you just need to maybe make yourself that little bit uncomfortable in order to see the truth, so to speak. To see the truth, because they're not acting in your best interests as much as they will try and convince you that they are. The Tory government, for example, tried to convince us that they were acting in our best interests when they were elected, and they obviously made all manner of problems worse, which is why I'm very suspicious. And for all that I don't like about the man that shared this video, he does in this context have a point, which I do need to bring up. That the Conservatives, no, I don't think that this gentleman is doing so for anything other than political brownie points. When I say this is from Zaya Yusuf's X page. The Conservatives were spearheading a lot of the initiatives that have destroyed Britain over their 14-year tenure from 2010 to 2024. And now they're trying to make you convinced that they're going to do anything about it. I'm not saying there's not good people within the Conservatives, but their name is mud. And in my opinion, they need to be destroyed as a political party. Right, they need to be destroyed as a political party. Same thing with Labour. Both of them need to be destroyed, because we do need a true change to the status quo. We do need a true change to the two-party system. right? If we keep contributing to the two-party system, we shouldn't be surprised as when it's just going to keep growing and getting worse and worse and worse. We complain about the two-party system, but you'll never see people get together and vote for a true alternative. And most of the time, it will sadly just take votes away from the one group that it would have voted for already. But this is more of a consequence with first past the post. This is more of a consequence with first past the post voting, which I'm no expert on this, obviously, but it is something that needs to be addressed. It is something that needs to be addressed, the way we do vote in these things. Maybe we need some sort of proportional system, a proportional representation or whatever. But this is a video that's resurfacing for all of his rhetoric recently, for all of the actions that he's doing to seemingly try and highlight the migrant crisis and all stuff like that. So Robert Jenrick, as immigration minister, I believe he was, at least in 2023, I'm not sure when this video is from, but was actively on whatever talk show this was, campaigning, saying that they were going to open up more of these hotels. More and more of these hotels, which is rich for Zaya Yusuf to talk about, because one of his Mohammedan buddies was exposed as being the spearhead of a lot of these hotels. I think he owns about 18 of them, I believe it was, and is making fucking millions off of them. So again, rich for him to be talking about this, but here is how proud Robert Jenrick was talking about it, and as well as now all of the others coming out to talk about it as well. Suala Braverman, Priti Patel, it makes you think all of their words ring hollow, and that is why I think the Conservatives as a political institution need to die. Not physically, not any of their members, obviously. Let's make that perfectly clear. I'm not saying that any of the Conservative members need to die. As a political institution, they need to be removed.
We have procured more hotels very rapidly, and more are coming on board literally every day. More hotels have been coming online almost every month throughout the whole of this year. So Suella Braverman and her predecessor, Priti Patel, were procuring more hotels. What I have done in my short tenure is ramp that up and procure even more.
What I have done in my short tenure is ramp that up and procure even more. And this is the thing, I always bring this up whenever I see Jenrick talking about it. People have to remember that back in 2021, he was one of the loudest voices championing all of the Afghan resettlement families that were coming over as part of the resettlement scheme that was going on back then, when I don't know if he was actually immigration minister at the time, but he would have likely known about the super injunction. And that, by the way, has cost us, I believe, in the tune of multiple millions that super injunction has. Potentially in the hundreds of millions. I can't remember if I saw a thing where it said it was 360 million or if it was 3.6 million. It was one of the two. Again, world of difference between those two. So again, don't take what I said as gospel there, but it has cost us a lot. It might have even been in the billions, actually. I can't remember. But again, a lot of these now just ringing as empty words. I went back and screenshotted a bunch of posts that Jenrick made in 2021, and people can change, but it is worthy thinking about with how much we've been betrayed, especially by the Conservatives, with Cameron, with Boris, with Sunak, right? Truss, I think, was the only real kind of good one in there, from what I understand. But with the betrayal, those are the Conservatives. Just seems like they're going to betray us again if they were to get in 2029 or whatever. So again, I think while we still got the time, we may start rallying around a true political alternative, whether that's going to be reform, which I think is just going to be more of the same. They're pure containment. When Nigel Farage got activated as the sleeper cell that he was to sabotage the BNP, for example, and he got activated to sabotage the Brexit movements that were coming up in 2010, why he left UKIP at what you think is a crowning moment of victory, right? Brexit got passed, you think it's a crowning moment of victory, and then all of a sudden he resigns. So again, reform or more containment, make no mistake about it, whether it's going to be UKIP, whether it's going to be the National Housing Party, whether it's going to be Jada Franson's party, whether it's going to be Britain First, whether it's going to be Homeland, I have no idea. But we got some serious problems, and this is the thing, we have, especially if you're on the right, it seems, maybe restore Britain, even though they've said they're not really going to be a political party, so to speak. They're just more so like an initiative. Whether it's going to be Advance UK, I do not know. One thing I do know, however, is that the political system and the police, which all go hand in hand with each other, need a right moral purge. So this happened recently, as I said. Pervy Plod over here. Pervy Plod, which I believe, based on the reference somebody linked, is a police constable by the name of Marcin Zielinski, right? not Zelensky. Zelensky. It's not the Ukrainian rent boy at the head of the government. It is a 47-year-old Hertfordshire police officer. He carried out a Section 32 search of a room in September 2024. He admitted one charge of theft and of corrupt or improper exercise of police powers and privileges because he stole underwear. He stole a lady's underwear from a home that he was been searching, and he did not realise. Makes you think the disgusting, such a small action it seems, but the wider implications it has when you have a look at what kind of people would be thinking this way in order to commit this act, what's going on up here in the minds of a lot of our police officers. That is more of a wider problem, and again, why we see a lot of the disgusting treatment of people at the hands of the police, because their moral compass, they don't have any moral compass to work off of anymore. I believe he was resigned from the force since then, but this is the video that resurfaced recently of this act taking place. He didn't know he was being videoed, and you got to think, this is where he knew he was saving this for some, sordid, disgusting purpose, because he back pockets them. He back pockets these, as you'll see on this Ring doorbell, on this Ring footage now that's in this lady's room. Makes you think, was the search lawful to start with? I don't know why. I don't know why he's searching this room, but I can tell you now, there's no good reason for a police officer, somebody we trust with protecting and serving us, to be back pocketing a young lady's knickers the way that this gentleman did. So you can see here, he's looking in the drawer. Finds a lady's knickers. Takes them in his hand. And puts them in his back pocket. Make sure they're all nice and hidden away. And then walks out as if nothing fucking happened. There's just something so unsettling about that. It's not even something that is like as truly heinous as like a true rape or anything like that, but you can't help but feel that that is you. If you're this young lady or whoever it is, whatever lady it is or woman, you can't help but feel disgustingly violated, especially given that without this footage, you'd never know that. You might be thinking that, your knickers got lost in the wash or something like that, or they got thrown out accidentally. Never know that some disgusting person that you trust with protecting and serving you and your community had taken them to play on whatever disgusting fantasy he had in your head, seemingly about you. Seemingly about you. Again, you can argue like no harm done if you don't know, but it's just truly disgusting. It's not something that a police officer should be doing, obviously. It's not something that really anybody should be doing, but especially somebody that dons the badge of protect and serve. Protect and serve. This just goes to show the mindset of a lot of people that have been allowed into the force. You got to think, this destruction has been done by design, because they wanted the force politicized. They wanted the force turned against the people, to make them unsafe, to terrorize them, like it's always been done throughout history with secret police like the NKVD, the KGB, and all of these other things. The modern incarnation is the FSB. China's going to have one. North Korea's going to have one. You have all manner of secret police in countries nowadays. You had the Stasi in Eastern Europe, right? And East Germany, sorry. You had the Khmer Rouge was so much of a secret police. It's just a terrorist organization at the head of government. But you have all kinds of things. You have the morality police in Iran, in IRGC controlled Iran, right? That if a woman goes out showing so much as her hair, they'll beat her, they'll kidnap her, they'll take her to the jail and gang rape her. So yeah, it's truly, truly disgusting. And obviously none of that stuff happened with this police officer, but it just goes to show the moral rot at the head of the police department that's trickled all the way down like a disgusting infection, right? And it really does need to be purged. This needs to be purged now. Many officers themselves are going to need to be purged, but also the ethics and the things that are being taught to these officers, what's being put into their heads, need to be purged and realigned as well. And the only way And I'm going to leave you with this. The only way we're going to do that, I say it time and time again, it's something that I've realized now, and I say it as a person that's not led a very virtuous life. Let's just say that. The only way we're going to do that is by acknowledging there is an objective good and there is an objective evil. And then we need to understand where that comes from. And I'll leave you there for today. Thank you very much for watching, listening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you found it useful. As I said, I'll be going away at the end of this week, so I'll try and make sure that I've at least got some clips coming out at a relatively regular schedule over the next couple of days or when I'm away. But thank you very much, because I won't be taking my equipment to record or anything like that. I want a nice break away. As I said, I had a lot of stressful things going on. So thank you very much for watching, listening, guys. I very much appreciate it. Please like, share, subscribe. Share probably being the most important one. Please help me get this out there. And yeah, thank you very much. Everybody leaves comments, etc., likes the video, shares it. I very much appreciate it. Have a good one, guys. I will hopefully speak to you again very soon. You take care now. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for watching. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, good night, wherever you are. Hwyl fawr. We'll see you next time. And you take care now. Godspeed.